What do you think about WWE erasing Benoit? What he did was terrible, but you got to give him credit. He was a great wrestler. This is a fantastic question. Shout out to Gabs for asking this one, and it's something I do have an opinion on. But I don't really take part in because it's kind of a slippery slope. But with this question, I understand why they erased Benoit. I totally get it. For people who knew and were there to watch his matches, we know Benoit was one of the greatest of all time. Had all the talent in the world. Definitely would have had a Hall of Fame career and had an argument to be considered the greatest of all time. But unfortunately, what took place during the fatal weekend in June of 2007 eradicates it. It overrules it. You can't justify it. Because if you bring in Benoit and you continue to kind of promote his name, questions are going to arise. Nothing good is going to come out of it. So I think for us, again, who watched the product then and remember Benoit, that's for us. That's for us. But from a business standpoint and from a mainstream standpoint, I think they did the right thing in terms of erasing Benoit. Because you don't want that association with your company. So I get it. I totally get it. I don't think it was the wrong call. Some people might disagree with that, but no. I think it was the only way. You can't. How are you going to, like, because he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame. Because how are you going to put someone like that in the Hall of Fame? You can't celebrate that. And I know people are going to say, well, separate the man from the wrestler. Like, that's what Chris Benoit did in his real life, but the character Benoit is one thing. It's still a tough slope. You can't argue that. And I think it's just a conversation that they would much rather avoid. And the way to do that, wipe the slate clean. Just erase Benoit from history. It's a shame because he had a great career, but ultimately how his life and career ended will always be the focal point. And it sucks because for two reasons. Reason number one, if you go back and you watch the Benoit documentary, it's Dark Side of the Ring. It's available on Hulu. If you're interested in Dark Side of the Ring, it is a series of professional wrestling stories that is exactly what it sounds like. It's the dark side. It's the, the violence, the demons that were battled, whether it was addiction, whether it was injuries, the controversies surrounding pro wrestling. They had a 2-part episode that was surrounded around the Benoit tragedy. And people talked about how Benoit was consumed by his profession. He wanted to be the greatest of all time. He wanted his work to speak for his legacy. He put so much time, so much effort, so much blood, so much sweat, so much tears into becoming one of the greatest of all time. And the irony now is no one will ever discuss it. No one will ever give him that credit on a mainstream appeal because he can't. It's ironic that the one thing he focused his whole life on doesn't matter, essentially. The second thing that sucks about it is who it's affected, and that's his son, David Benoit. David Benoit, who obviously knew his father as his father. He didn't know Chris was going to do this. Nobody thought that Chris was going to do it. So now David, who has made it vocal that he wants to participate in pro wrestling, he's not going to get to because of his association with Chris. Now, we talked about this in a previous live stream. I think his best shot would be to wear a mask and change his name. That's how you're going to get into the business. Aside from that, I do not see people wanting to book David Benoit, and it's a shame. The Benoit tragedy could have been prevented with right and better communication. I heard that Bob Holly was supposed to him that day, and that made Benoit offended and upset. So I haven't heard the Bob Holly stuff. In terms of, like, it could have been prevented, maybe. I mean, it depends on what you believe. The forensics has shown that Chris Benoit suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, aka CTE, severe concussions that altered the the structure and the health of his brain. Upon forensics and the autopsy results, it was discovered for Chris Benoit, his brain. Keep in mind, Benoit was like in his late 30s, early 40s, right? Upon his death, it was discovered that he had the brain of a 67 Alzheimer's patient. The deterioration, the damage that his brain had sustained throughout the course of his life was significant. CTE is a real thing. So I understand, could it have been prevented with the right, better communication? Maybe. But unfortunately, brain trauma is legit. So I don't know if it would have been prevented. Could it have been stalled? Maybe. I don't know. Chris Benoit was very close with Bob Holly because Bob Holly was trying to new Eddie. If you're trying to say he was trying to be the new Eddie, Chris's relationship with Benoit, or Chris's relationship with Eddie, was well documented. 87-year-old. There you go. 87. I misspoke, but that proves my point that CT, I think eventually it would have affected him to do something. Maybe not in the sense of something so severe as taking the lives of his family. And this is taking a real dark turn. I'm sorry, guys, but I think eventually maybe something could have happened like that.